Hello, welcome back to the True Crime Guys podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
How's everybody doing? We got another fun episode this week. No Moida. This should be a fun one where we can make a lot of jokes. We got an escape artist, a prison escape artist. Some would say the most decorated of all of the prison escape artists.
Yeah, a lot of people deem him one of the most intelligent prisoners in history.
I don't know if I would say...
That's a bold statement, right?
I mean, he's intelligent, don't get me wrong. A bit of a savant, but more than anything, the most determined prisoner, the most stubborn, determined prisoner I've ever... even up there with Bronson, who we did. That dude, he was spending most of his time doing push-ups and body squats and stuff like that. Less time just trying to find ways out. Ted Bundy would be up there too, like if he had spent more time in prison.
Right.
Like also just you leave any tiny little inkling of like possibility and they will find it.
Yes, absolutely. They can't accept being in there. It's just not part of their personality, right? It's like, if you would have just behaved, you would have only had to do 2 years. Well, 2 years is eternity for them. You might as well just give them a life sentence because they're not doing it.
He's a bit like a toddler in that way. Like they just can't accept this momentary, like this is just temporary. They can't know. This is forever to me, and I've got to get the fuck out of here.
And with a lot of intelligent people, there is some type of downside to it. And in his instance, is he didn't really have the best people skills, right? But he also just couldn't conform. He's like, I just can't conform to this. I can't just behave. I can't do what someone else wants me to do. Yeah. Like I would rather just escape and do things on my own way and then get imprisoned again.
He's one of the more likable and understandable characters that we've ever done on this show. I mean,
yes, I
grew to like him. There's a documentary called The Mind of Mark DeFriest. Mark DeFriest being the person we're focusing on this week.
Yes,
and he's interviewed throughout, and you've met people like this guy. He's different. Like you said, he doesn't really like people, but he had a mechanical mind. He could have been a great repairman or something like that. Just leave him alone, let him do his thing.
Right.
But he got kind of sucked into the justice system early on and then just never got out. I mean, my tagline that I wrote for this episode is Mark DeFriest, a man that could turn an overnighter in jail into a life sentence, which is essentially what happened. I mean, he started out with this very benign crime, something that really wasn't even a crime if he had just waited a little longer, like getting tools that his father had promised to him when he died.
Right.
He turned that into an entire life in prison, like taking the tools that his father had promised him before probate had done its due diligence after his father passed, into an entire life in prison and basically torture within prison, because everyone in the prison staff ended up hating this guy in whichever prison he went to, because he just would not conform, would not do it. And they hate that. They fucking hate that. COs and shit, they just despise someone who just can't accept their position.
Absolutely. It makes their life difficult, man. They constantly have to be on guard. But that's just another example of this man like not wanting to conform. All he had to do was just wait. You would have got what's coming to you. But that's just not his style. It's not his style. Mark wants what he wants right now. But still, like you said, he's still likable. He's still a likable guy for sure. Like I like Charles Bronson. You know what I mean? They're likable dudes.
Right.
So
let's get into this one. It's gonna be fun.
Let's do it.
Well, I'm Mark's wife, the most important person in his life, and he feels the love of his life as he is mine. And we've been married for almost 14 years this month. We had just been married a week by proxy when I went down to visit him and met him in person for the first time. He's just got so many aspects to his personality. Great sense of humor. He's creative, very artistic, not autistic, but artistic, very good with his hands. He draws well. If he had just accepted his first brief sentence of 4 years, he probably would have gotten out, but his personality didn't allow him to do that. I think the only way we're going to be able to get him out is to prove that he has some mental problems and that he never should have been incarcerated.
I met Mark about 30 years ago. Of anybody that I know of in prison, Mark is probably, short of a death row inmate, one of the hardest people to get out, because Mark has put himself in about as deep a hole as you can get. And the only way he's ever going to get out is in my opinion, because of his mental health status, and that finally society, including the Parole Commission, starts to address the issues of the mentally ill in prison.
I've done this for over 30 years, and I've learned a lot about mental illness. And people can be manipulative looking and clever, and they can think and plan and still be mentally ill. And when I use the term mentally ill, I mean psychotic, biologically broken. You step back and you look at the big picture. This kid was doing things and not being anxious about doing them that were clearly harmful to his legal situation, even though he appeared to know they were harmful to his legal situation. He was very talkative, even in stressful situations, in interviews after arrests or attempted escapes. He laughed and joked and was talkative. After trying to shoot people with zip guns, he was loud and boisterous and rowdy and tore up his cell repeatedly. Frequent complaints about headaches, even at times when it would not affect evaluations. That's an important one. Even in my report somewhere, I said that he was, he used plans and he was organized, but people can be planful in the service of strange ideas. I'm going to read each of these sentences to you one at a time, and then you're going to tell me if it's true or false for you. All right. I like mechanics magazines. Is that true or false for you?
True.
I have a good appetite.
True.
I wake up fresh and rested most mornings.
False.
My daily life is full of things that keep me interested.
False.
I believe I am being followed.
Definitely.
I feel that I have often been punished without cause.
True.
I love my father, or if your father is dead, I loved my father.
True.
I am sure I get a raw deal from life.
Yeah, that one's true.
That's true.
Yeah, life sucks.
Much of the time my head seems to hurt all over.
True.
I have not lived the right kind of life.
True.
I often hear voices without knowing where they come from.
False.
My sex life is satisfactory.
False.
Even when I'm with people, I often think I wish I were a child again. When I get bored, I like to stir up some excitement. I've often wished I were a girl. Very few headaches. Much of the time my head seems to hurt. In love with my head seems to hurt. I'm afraid of losing my mind.
Absolutely.
My mother is a good woman, or if your mother is dead, my mother was a good woman.
True, I guess.
My soul sometimes leaves my body.
False, but I've been trying. Lots of loose things.
I am certainly lacking in self-confidence.
False.
I would like to be a florist.
You're what?
Florist, someone who works in a flower shop.
True. That's it?
Well, that's it for the test, yes. I think we'll just end it for today and then we'll start up again tomorrow. Do you have any questions?
How is all this crap relevant to my mental state?
Well, I suspect if I am right about what I think may be wrong with you, that I may be able to make your life a lot better.
Well, it's nice to see you again, Dr. Burrow.
You're a gentleman to even say it. But yeah,
Yeah. You said I was what was it? You said I was a malingering idiot?
well, what can I say? There are things that you do and say when you're young that you then decide later were wrong.
But where's the fairness in all this crap? I mean, for real, I went to prison when I was, 20? For doing a bunch of stupid shit. I ain't never hurt nobody, and here I am still, huh? Done 30 years and got 30 more to go. Well, ain't that nice?
The reason I ask all this is because you talk about you being a survivor, but it seems like the things that you think you've done to help you survive have caused you more trouble. And that's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, I'm still alive. Lots of people I know ain't.
But if you had been able to not do some of these things that got you in trouble with the authorities, might you have been out on the streets sooner?
Yeah, I've been gone long ago. You know, if I just a rapist or a murderer or something, they let me out. I'm an idiot and made them look like idiots.
All right, our case this week is Mark DeFriest. And as we mentioned in the documentary, it's called The Mind of Mark DeFriest. I highly recommend it. It's one of the best documentaries that we've ever watched for this case, for any case, really. I mean, it reminds me a bit of the who was the Barefoot Bandit, Colton
Harris?
whatever his name was. You remember the documentary? I almost feel like it was probably made by the same filmmaker because the way
or something like that.
Yes. The way that was shot and the way this is shot, where they mix in animation and stuff like that, they recreate a lot of the scenes with animation in this one as well. And it was just super well done. I can't recommend it enough. There's a website where the filmmakers rent a VOD for it. That's what I did. I paid $4 to rent it for like 3 days or whatever and watch it. And I think it's themindofmarkdefriest.com is where you can go watch it.
And we'll have it in the sources below the episode as well.
Yeah. So highly recommend it. And so he was born on August 18th, 1960 in the tobacco fields of Gadsden County, Florida, and shares a birthday with Dennis Leary, Christian Slater, and Edward Norton.
Wow. A couple of A-listers.
Yeah.
Right?
Big time. Yeah.
Seriously.
Leary and Norton for sure. And then Slater, underrated actor.
Yeah. He had his time, right?
True Romance, one of my favorite all-time movies.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah. Yeah, back to Mark. He was regarded as a savant early on in life. Never much of a people person, as we mentioned. He was into doing experiments in his parents' basement every day, all day long, doing chemistry, mechanical engineering as a young teen. He was known as someone that could repair anything. And as he was doing these chemical experiments in the basement, he even had a quote saying, "A couple times I blew myself up."
Well, that comes with the territory.
For sure. And people have speculated as to what he became as an adult, a very different style of personality.
Right, like maybe some of this chemical exposure
inhalation
could have messed with his mind as well.
And we're about to go into another theory that may have compounded it with his mother.
Right.
His mother, Marilyn, was also known as a cold woman. Not a fan of his experiments. She was constantly yelling at him about them. And there was apparently no hugs from mom and no I love yous. She was a very cold woman. And also may have been responsible for what Mark later became because she would allegedly, according to multiple sources, she would regularly shake Mark as a baby. Mark's father would come home from work and she would just be in a rage from him crying and whatnot, not able to deal with it, and would regularly shake him, and it could have something to do with brain damage.
Yeah, it didn't help, that's for sure. I'm surprised he grew up as intelligent as he did.
Yeah, when you have brain damage, it definitely can control your impulse control. We've talked about it many times with serial killers.
Absolutely.
He seemed very impulsive. Like he wanted what he wanted now, and he was willing to take it, even if there was repercussions. He didn't care about that. I'm gonna do this right now.
Right.
His father, Everett, was a very different personality from his mother. He was an older man when he had Mark. All the videos and pictures you see of them together, he's quite older when Mark was a baby. He looked like he was already like maybe even in his 60s by the time he had Mark.
Whoa. Okay.
Like at least 50s. Granted, he went through World War II. I'm sure he aged quickly. Maybe he was like 30. I don't know. But he looked older.
Right. He lived a hard life.
He definitely did.
Yeah.
But young Mark and his father Everett had a very extremely close relationship. Everett was a World War II veteran and OSS member, which was a pre-CIA organization. In 1942, the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, became the first independent U.S. intelligence agency. It lasted for 3 years and 3 months, but became the basis for the modern Central Intelligence Agency. So the precursor to the CIA. His father was a member of.
Interesting little fun fact for you.
And his father was very paranoid about the Russians, having gone through World War II and the Cold War, and being a high-ranking member in the military.
Right.
He instilled this into his young son, the constant fear of the Russians invading and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, his father, I think his father has to take a lot of credit for some of the things that he did later on with some of these experiments and things like that. I mean, because he kind of pushed him to question everything. And then also to learn these crazy tactics of survival, because his father was so paranoid that the Soviets might take over. So he wanted his son to be completely prepared.
His father trained him in war tactics from the time he was, here's some quotes. I was trained from age 6, guerrilla warfare, explosions, bombs, anti-tank rockets. And in regards to scaling barbed wire fences, which is something that Mark DeFriest would use on the regular as an adult, he said, quote, my dad taught me how to deal with stuff like that. So he could go over a barbed wire fence. I'm not sure what the maneuver was, but his father had taught him how to do it without cutting yourself up real bad.
Right. Can't you just like throw a piece of clothing over the barbed wire? I think I saw that in a movie one time. Somebody took like a jacket
For sure.
and just threw it over
that would help. I'm sure it's still going to go through you'd have to have some thick shit. You want like a Carhartt jacket or something.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure they're giving those out in prison.
No. But here's a quote. He had a ton of love for his father. He was a big influence on his life, but he also knew, his father was crazy. He said, quote, fucking dude was nuts. I ain't never seen a Russian yet.
Well, just in case, your dad saw a lot of them. So, come on now. Yeah. He didn't know how the future was going to pan out.
And maybe it was due to guys like his father being paranoid and always, being aware of the threat that helped it to not happen.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Being diligent.
Yeah. But as a young man, Mark was a free bird and a bit of a troublemaker, but not dangerous. I never heard of, there was a few escapes where, I guess if you were the staff of the hospital he was in or the prison he was in, where you would view him as dangerous, but he was doing what he was doing. He had to create a threat in order to get out, but he never intentionally hurt anyone that I ever heard about.
Right, right.
And in fact, he was often beaten up, bullied, and taken advantage of in prison. And I never heard of him hurting anyone in prison. He just basically accepted the role of the submissive in most scenarios in prison, just as a means of survival.
He wasn't
not physically
he wasn't
imposing.
Violent. Right.
He was not a physically imposing character. Not a like he was more of a slender man, and not a violent, not a anger-filled man.
Right, a lot different than Bronson in that way.
Yeah,
Bronson didn't take no shit.
Yeah, Mark used his diligence and his intelligence to escape, whereas Bronson was trying to use brute force all the time. Mm-hmm. Very different in that way. Exactly. And Bronson was not going to be he was not going to be the bitch in prison. He was not going to be taking it from anyone else. He was When Mark's parents got divorced when he was younger, his mother sent him, as we said, she was a cold woman. She sent him to a boys' reform school. Couldn't deal with him after his father left, which he promptly escaped from. And this would be his first of many escapes in his lifetime.
I wonder if her lack of connection with him came from, him being so different. Him,
which she may be responsible for.
Exactly.
For shaking him so much.
Not saying that she didn't cause it, but I mean, for whatever reason, as a young child, I'm sure his ability to connect with her as a mother and show affection probably wasn't very strong either.
Right.
And so it was hard for her to, retaliate that same type of affection. But that's no excuse. I mean, as a parent, you're supposed to teach your child how to love, not expect it. But still.
So Mark DeFriest, when he was in his late teens, he was working as a welder on a bridge and met a young lady named Brenda while working on the bridge. I'm not sure how that strikes up. Maybe there was backed up traffic while he's welding, and I don't know, maybe spit some game at her while she was in the car. I don't know how this goes down, but pretty impressive. And they would quickly, how it goes back in these days in the 70s, young couples, they just get married on a whim. They quickly got married, and I don't even know if they were of age yet. I don't even know if they were 18. But you would know a thing about that yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works out just fine.
That's right.
Obviously.
Never know.
So they quickly married and began traveling around the country in his Chevy pickup that he kept immaculately clean and organized. His first wife, Brenda, had a quote about that. She said that you could eat off of his tools. They were that clean and organized in his truck.
Wow.
And he later said that these were the best years of his life, the first couple of years of their marriage, just traveling around. But trouble started in 1980, and his life would never be the same. What could have been a short stint in jail or prison if he had behaved became literally his entire life. It all started in 1980 when Mark was out traveling around with his wife, and he got wind that back in Florida, his father had passed away. And, they had the close relationship, and they had similarities in that they loved working on things together and all of that. Right. And so he went back to Florida to gather up his father's tools, which he claimed his father had promised to him, which I believe 100%. Why wouldn't he?
Right, exactly.
And he said that he didn't want any. Yeah, he said he didn't want any of the money, any of that, the insurance, life insurance policies, none of that stuff was all going to go to his stepmother, and he was fine with that. He just wanted the tools. But he later recalled going back to Florida to gather this stuff up. He said, quote, "Should have stayed the fuck away from that place, because this is where it all began." When he went back and gathered up the items, they had not gone through probate. He was, I think, 18 or 19 at the time, didn't understand how that all worked. It has to go through the process when someone dies, the will and testament, all that stuff. If it was in the will that he was to get the tools, which I don't even know. His father might have just verbally said, "You can have these." Who knows if he even had a will? That would have been another problem. But nonetheless, the tools and the stuff that he gathered was considered theft because it hadn't gone through probate. And his stepmother, unfortunately called the police. And when the police came out to his trailer in Florida to question him about it, he fled out the back window and made a run for it. A very common theme for him throughout his life. Mm-hmm. Rather than just owning up to what you've done, he just runs.
Right. Maybe, what do you think, if he gives the tools back here and waits for the process, you think gets a slap on the wrist?
I do. Is it, it could have just been a misunderstanding. Yeah, it could have just been a Nope. Oh, it's just never good to fight. It's not good to fight the Fed, the government, the prison system. Sometimes you have to just deal with it for a little while.
Yeah, you got to pick your battles, and these tools, not a good battle to fight.
No, and I'm sure he already had plenty of tools,
I know, right?
So Mark would be captured in Alabama shortly after he ran away from that police officer, and would be extradited back to Florida, where a judge would sentence him to 4 years in prison, which is pretty steep considering the crime. Stealing his own father's tools that had been promised to him allegedly.
Yeah.
But like you said earlier, had he not run away, things might have been different.
Right.
But he started off on the wrong foot, and it never.
And had there been an actual will, I think things would have been different as well. But either way, you have to wait on that process. If you jump the gun, then she can press charges, and a stepmother who's looking to get all the money she can out of this situation.
We've talked about it in the past, how death can bring out the worst in people. Sometimes, the greed kicks in as someone passes away and everybody starts turning on each other.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad.
They blame it on getting sentimental or whatever. But, it can get pretty vicious.
Meanwhile, they're taking that shit to the pawn shop the first chance they get.
Yep.
So, yeah, he gets 4 years, man. Kind of gets the book thrown at him for pretty harmless crime, really. Didn't hurt anybody. I mean, I'm sure the stepmom was getting plenty from the father's death. But nonetheless, 4 years. And he was not going to sit around and just take that 4 years, unfortunately. It would have been over. He probably would have gotten a lesser sentence had he been well behaved in prison.
I think so.
Not his style, as you said.
No.
So not long after getting locked up, 1 month after incarceration to be exact, on July 8th, 1980, during Tuesday Bible study, him and seven others in prison made a break for it. He said, and I quote, "You're supposed to be escorted everywhere you go at night. 8 of us broke camp and hauled ass for the fence." And he was kind of making fun of the other guys because they couldn't get over the fence, and they were calling up to him like, "Mark, come on, come back and help me." But
he's like, "Nah, I actually convinced all of you guys as a distraction, so good luck."
Right. While they're busy snatching you down, I'm already going to be gone.
Right, I'm gone. And he may have.
I think he was the only one that made it over the fence and out of there through the woods.
Yeah.
And would actually run to an old friend's home nearby and hotwired his Ford pickup in the driveway. It was like 3 a.m.
Oh, my God.
He made it sound so simple, like popped the hood and like hooked some cables up from the battery to something. Yeah. I don't know what he did, but he's mechanically inclined to say the least.
Right.
And had that truck out of there in no time. But he was never good. He was great at escaping, but then he would never last very long once he got out. It seems like law enforcement would catch up with him very quickly. And
I think that's because he probably, wanting to do things his own way, he didn't want to just be on the run. So he thought once he got out, I'm going to do what I want. And then the cops were like, "Okay, well, we're going to find you." Very easily.
You're still in the area at some hotel. And
right, exactly.
Pretty easy. driving the same truck you stole that just got reported stolen out of the driveway.
Right. Exactly. I wonder what his friend thought about that. He's like, God damn it, Mark.
Right. If you just told me it was you, I probably wouldn't report it stolen. You could
Right? Yeah, exactly.
just tell me where you're going to leave it somewhere, and I'll go get it.
Seriously.
So only 2 days later, he would be captured by police at the Driftwood Motel. And at this point, this is where things spiral out of control, because now he's pissed them off. He's escaped from prison, and they throw a bunch of charges on him. Burglary, grand theft, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. And to these charges, he says, quote, nobody has a sense of humor.
Nope. Not in the justice system.
That's kind of the way he viewed everything as a joke. This is a guy that would regularly joke about assassinating the president to prison staff.
Right.
It was literally a joke, but like obviously they had to take shit like that seriously.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And he just didn't understand that. He just couldn't understand the severity of life's, decisions that you make. It really seemed like, I think people came around to this being a disorder. There was a doctor that was tasked with deciding competency for him, and he plays a huge role in this case, and we'll talk about him in a bit. And it took him 30 years to come around to what Mark is, and that he finally accepted, like, this dude shouldn't be competent because he just does not understand what he's doing to himself. He's like, it reminds me of the Breakfast Club when Bender's like going back and forth with the dean, the douchebag dean, and he's just like giving himself an extra day of detention every second just because he couldn't help himself,
Yeah, exactly.
That's how this guy is. But it's like far more severe than a day of detention.
Right.
I'm talking years of life in prison.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so against the advice of his attorney in this instance, he would plead guilty to all of the 6 new charges that were thrown at him, and he would just get brutalized in jail awaiting his sentencing. For these charges. He was frequently beat up and raped. He told his first wife, Brenda, at this point not to wait for him, that he would surely be a different person when he got out.
See, that's sad, man. That's disheartening.
Yeah, she was interviewed throughout the documentary, and she would take his advice, and basically, she knew he wouldn't be the same either.
Yeah. And this also, I mean, living this type of life in prison and knowing that this is the only life you can live in prison, it's quite the motivational tool to escape as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that really puts a little fire up your ass to get the hell out of there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so he would have a stint in a mental hospital because courts were asked during this time, they asked psychologists to evaluate him for his competency. And there was like, I think 6 psychologists that evaluated him and his record and everything. And they all agreed that he had a myriad of mental disorders. And it's funny because in the documentary, he's been interviewed and he's asking like the interviewer, like, do you think I'm crazy? Cause like, I don't think I am. I think they were wrong.
Right.
But like, there's a whole scale of different types of mental disorders, and he clearly has something going on in that he who else could turn such a small crime into a lifetime in prison because they just couldn't stop hurting themselves.
Don't they initially find out that he maybe was a little bit on the spectrum, maybe a touch of the autism?
I never heard that brought up. As many of the different disorders as they even like psychopath was brought up.
Yeah.
Which doesn't, I mean, I guess not all psychopaths are violent. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean you're violent.
We're not experts in this field, obviously. Let's make that clear.
Absolutely not.
We don't want to upset anybody theorizing about mental health disorders and whatnot, but they all agreed that he had some severe issues and he was not competent to stand trial for the crimes that he had committed. Right. And at this point, he was put in Florida State Hospital, which he described as similar to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the film.
Right.
He said it was very much like that. Yeah. And of
high
course,
security.
Well, I mean, compared to a high security prison, it's kind of a joke. He said, quote, they had bars on the windows and all that shit, but it ain't all that tough, right? That was his quote.
Well, I mean, the hospital's not going to be as tough as a prison.
Yeah.
That's not the point. They're just trying to keep people sedated, Yeah.
Speaking of sedated, this is my absolute favorite part of this story right here. It makes it worthwhile listening to this episode if you're listening right now. This is amazing. So he gets put in Florida State Hospital. He's deemed incompetent to stand trial for crimes and whatnot. He's got a bunch of stuff going on mentally. And so he says, quote, my first plan was that I'd get everybody stoned.
Nice.
And so he wants to get all the staff stoned. And obviously there's a lot of drugs floating around in a mental hospital. And
as you can imagine.
So he he finds himself some blotter acid, aka LSD 25. He finds
Why do they even have that?
They're drugging everybody. That's a good point. I don't know why you'd want these people taking LSD, but
right?
Who knows what they were using it for?
It's kind of scary that that's even there, honestly.
Right. And so he somehow acquires a whole bottle of this, about 75 to 100 tabs worth of LSD, and decides he's going to pour this into the break room coffee pot and get the whole. He said he timed it to where it was right during shifts change, to where some of the people, you know, that are at the end of their shift and the people that are beginning their shift are going to be drinking from the same pot. He had it all worked out, and he already had worked it out that he was going to pick the locks as soon as everybody was fucked up and get out of there.
Now everyone's a mental patient.
And now we're all on the same level playing field here.
Now everybody's crazy.
Yeah. So he says it didn't work because, for multiple reasons, like the people started freaking out. The staff, he said the head aide drank some coffee, and it kicked in, and he was staring at the washing machine as it was turning around and around, and got freaked out by it and started ripping this thing apart, ripped the door off of the washing machine, was kicking it and everything else. Meanwhile, a red-haired psychologist woman drank some and was going up and down the halls, grabbing her crotch and saying, "My pussy's hot."
Oh my God. That's so
and
specific.
It was at that point.
I guess you can't really forget that, though.
No. And it was at that point that security realized something was wrong and locked down the whole building.
Yeah, something's wrong.
But Mark did not get the blame for this. No one did. They never figured out who drugged the coffee pot, and obviously they were a little more careful about having just the coffee pot and the break room exposed to the patients, as well as the chemicals, I would hope.
Seriously, they need way more security cameras in there, because this should have been an easy investigation. How do you not? How are you not filming everything in a mental hospital?
This was probably the early 80s, I think, like 80, 81, something like that. So I mean, security cameras are not really common back then.
I guess not, but man, they had something.
Right.
Wow. Well, good for him.
So, yeah. Well, nonetheless, it didn't take Mark long to devise his next plan, which is even more impressive. It involved the wood shop. They had a wood shop at this place where they would, help these patients learn a trade and whatnot and keep themselves busy. There's old videos. They showed the videos in the documentary of like this hospital bragging about how they rehabilitate these people and whatnot. Like this guy's like walking around like, look, they built this bench and everything. And then you roll that into Mark, who finds some copper sheets and rolled them around pencils to design a double-barreled gun, and he builds two of these in the wood shop.
Oh my God.
He used some rolled copper and rolled them into barrels for guns, and he would tape one to his genitals and the other he put between his ass cheeks. He then used an ice pick to remove one of his own teeth and got himself admitted to the dental ward, which had less security. It was kind of outside. You go through some security checks to get there. Yeah. And you had to be escorted by 2 guards to go get the dental work done.
God. That's the hardest part of the plan right there.
Yeah, he had a plan for them. Yeah, he ripped his own tooth out with an ice pick. Damn. They realized right away in the dental ward that this was self-mutilation, by the way. But nonetheless, they had to do work to him.
Still had to fix it.
They patch him up, and he's getting escorted back to the main wing of the hospital, and he asks if he can use the restroom, and the 2 guards make the mistake of allowing him to go into the restroom alone. At which point he came out of the bathroom with his 2 double-barreled guns and quickly pointed one of them at each of the guards' heads and said, "If you move, I'll blow your fucking brains out." Oh my! And so he subdued them.
Worked. These guns actually worked.
They worked. He demonstrated the power of one of the guns by shooting out the phone in the office before running out of the building. So buying himself some time by shooting out that phone, which they surely would have. These 2 guards were the only ones privy to what was going on. They would have ran to the phone and alerted everyone else. So by shooting out the phone, he bought himself another couple minutes.
What did he use as a projectile? Do you know?
Oh, man, I don't know if they even broke that down in the documentary.
That's what I'm kind of confused about. I mean, I guess I understand the copper tubing and all this shit, but like what did he use as powder, as gunpowder, as an explosive, as what was the igniter, what was the projectile?
Yep.
That's got so many questions.
He was unbelievably crafty.
Yeah, he was. God,
probably some sort of batteries maybe for the powder. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you could craft anything into some sort of a sharp projectile, you know.
Right. Some Fallout shit.
More copper, really, you could probably use. Right?
Yeah.
For sure look like a Fallout gun, for sure.
It looked like a pipe pistol or something like that.
Yep.
Man.
So he escapes yet again, this time from a mental hospital. And once again, he didn't last long on the outside. He was caught up to fairly quickly while trying to steal a car. And
Damn it, Mark.
and this would be the end of his time in mental hospitals for a while. He would be back to prison because the mental hospital no longer wanted to deal with him.
Right.
Which is kind of funny. That's not how this should work. That's not how this should work. Just because you guys don't want to deal with him doesn't mean he doesn't belong there instead of prison. I mean,
well, I think when you have a hospital patient who can make guns, dude, it's like they have to draw the line somewhere. You know what I mean? I like you said, he's not violent, but at the same time, imagine being someone who works in that hospital. Yeah. And then you have the potential, like you can't let this guy around copper sheeting, like, or anything. Like this guy can't even be around metal. Like, holy, he's fucking Magneto over here.
Heck no,
like,
dude.
Making weapons out of everything. Doesn't make any sense, man. Yeah, they don't know how to handle someone like that.
Dude, he was, you see his skills on display through some of the art and like stuff that he designed while in prison that he would send to his second wife.
Yeah.
They interviewed his second wife. They went into her home and talked to her. She's a much older lady, but he would send her crafts that he had made. He made these little rocking chair photo holder things. Like a I don't know, like a photo frame holder, but it was like a rocking chair, and it was super like cool looking. Yeah. But it was made out of he would use the interior of a potato chip bag and like fold them up into these little diamonds and then secure them, and then he turned them into a rocking chair. It was pretty incredible.
That is incredible.
Like
I can't even imagine how that happened.
That's what I'm saying. Like this is the kind of guy we're dealing with here. The guy is capable of some shit like that and making guns out of.
You can't even give this guy potato chips. God damn it.
Exactly, dude. And we'll see him awaiting sentencing yet again. After this escape, the court then was left. It seems like they handpicked a psychologist / doctor to determine his competency intentionally. This guy who they I think thought would give them the result they wanted. You know what I'm saying? They picked a guy named Dr. Burland, and they tasked this guy with the question of whether he was competent this time to stand trial for what he had done. And despite the other 6 professionals that had determined that he was not competent, Dr. Burland decided he was. And so now, he's competent to stand trial for his crimes, and he's awaiting sentencing. And during this time, he destroys a straitjacket and ankle shackles allegedly within 5 minutes, shredded this straitjacket somehow. He also allegedly destroyed 3 cells using only a toothbrush.
Jesus.
He's a modern wonder. I just don't know how he did some of the shit he did.
I don't get it, man.
Yeah.
How?
He
this
also
guy's resourceful.
This is where he really, really, really fucks himself. He, at this point, constructs a usable gun out of a tube of toothpaste. And when another cell member or like another prisoner asked him if he could, if this gun actually works, he demonstrated it by shooting out what he said was a plastic thing on the wall in the cell. And they then charged him with attempted murder. Someone said that he shot it at this guy, and they charged him with attempted murder.
You believe that?
Fuck no.
Or maybe that guy was trying to take advantage of him, and he was like, I got something for you, motherfucker. And maybe he just did that to threaten him, because you're in an 8x8 cell max. It's like if he wanted to shoot him, he would have.
Absolutely.
Man, come on.
Do you enjoy the drama of a good relationship story? Or judging whether or not someone is an asshole? Then you should check out the Reddit on Wiki podcast, where I, Josh Shell, and my co-hosts John and Sean react to some of the craziest stories we can find on Reddit. From terrible relationship stories to crazy mother-in-laws, we cover it all every Monday and Friday. So subscribe to Reddit on Wiki on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, bring the tea.
So at this point, he was badly mistreated. He was placed in solitary confinement, which in this jail, while he was awaiting his trial or whatever, it's still written down. Like they found the records later of the way he was treated within this jail at this point. He was put in a pitch black room with no mattress, no sheets, no water, no toiletries, no toilet paper, no clothes. He was fully nude. And so he had to sleep basically in a concrete box with nothing. And he had to eat his food that he was given each day with no utensils with his hands. He was treated like an animal, not allowed to shower, no daylight, no sunlight, no nothing. He was also tortured by the COs who would open up the door and spray him with a hose. He was treated like a complete animal.
Yeah. The system just made him worse, man. It really did.
Wherever he was at, the staff ended up hating him, and they would basically torture the guy as much as they could.
Yeah. But that just made it worse. Honestly, I think that just inspired him even more to figure out something.
Yep. So he would be then brought in front of a judge and given a life sentence. So
that's too much, man. That's too much.
What started out as him taking his father's tools after his death has now spiraled out of control to the point where he now has a life sentence.
See,
it's
God,
unbelievable.
Almighty.
You can't tell me this dude doesn't have some shit wrong with him.
Yeah, I know, right? He just can't be caged that way. There's just something. Yeah, he just wasn't dealt with the correct way from the beginning.
Yeah. Granted, it's hard to, when you're talking about the scale and the volume of people that are brought into the justice system, it's hard to treat everyone differently and special,
And here's the thing, though, like from his first arrest, why would they treat him different? Because he was living a very normal life before then. He had a great job. He had a great marriage. He was talented. He was doing fine in society before he stole these tools. So why would they treat him any differently? I mean, it just seems like, though, the system created a monster here. It really did.
He's like a wild animal that can't be broken. It's like trying to turn a crocodile into a family pet, or something. I don't know. He's not obviously, we've brought up how he's not really a dangerous person per se, but he's just unable to be caged. He's unable to be caged.
Yep.
The only way you could cage him is in the instance where, like they did in the concrete block with nothing. Because if you give him anything to work with, he's going to find a way.
Yeah, they couldn't even give him
he's
clothes.
He's that crafty and that determined.
That's insane.
Yeah, if you gave him clothes, he'd probably find a way out of concrete cell. He'd probably use those clothes to bend the bars or something. Craft a knife or a gun out of them
together, make a shiv. I don't know.
Right. He'd find a way. I don't know.
He would.
So, as if things didn't seem to like they could get any worse, he was then sent to the notorious Florida State Prison, or FSP as they call it, where he was allegedly gang raped upon arrival by 15 inmates.
Oh my God.
His stories within FSP are brutal. And while there, he would rack up a staggering 209 disciplinary reports, which has to be a record, and numerous escape attempts. He was on the regular making fake keys, saw blades, like acquiring saw blades to try and saw his way out.
Right.
It was never him hurting people. All of these 209 disciplinary reports, I don't think any of them were like him hurting someone else or anything like that. It was just him not following the rules, him trying to get out is all it was.
Yeah. God.
He's also, trying to get fucked up anytime he could, acquiring drugs and alcohol.
Trying to occupy his mind.
Making radios. I think at several occasions he made like a radio so he could listen to the radio. That was some shit that he got really good at when he was a kid. Like making transistors and things like that.
Right. That's kind of like the first things that those type of like tech gurus and stuff start dealing with,
Start taking apart clocks and radios.
Yep. That's where it starts.
Yep. So due to the unbelievable amount of disciplinary reports, Mark's projected parole went from 2002 to 2040.
Dude, that's too much.
He turned a life sentence, quote unquote, which is, 25 years or whatever, into a true life sentence now. I mean, you're talking him being locked up from 1980 till 2040.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And while in FSP, he became the love partner of a Cuban man named Uno, who they called Uno, who became Mark's boyfriend / protector. This was a submissive dominant relationship with Uno being the dominant. And Mark had a quote about this. As long as I follow his bizarre set of rules and behave like a lady at all times, he treats me fairly well, I guess. And he had to be called Wendy Castro during this time. You have to think with him being Cuban, the Castro name, we know where that came from.
Right. Yeah.
And basically he was okay with this relationship because it kept him safe from other inmates. So he's getting raped by one guy as opposed to as many as who knows how many within that prison. But
he's doing what he has to survive at this point.
Yep. And he was allegedly transferred multiple times over the years to undisclosed locations. In 1999, Mark witnessed the fatal beating of Frank Valdez, who had been convicted of murdering a correctional officer. And Mark would be a few cells away and confirm the medical examiner's conclusion that Valdez was beaten to death. And so for his protection, he was transferred to a prison in California, which had to be better than FSP for sure.
Okay, so he witnessed some.
I'm guessing he witnessed the COs
Valdez.
beating this guy to death. Yeah,
Yes,
because
and
that makes 100% considering this guy had murdered a correctional officer. So
Right.
of course this was their get back.
Right, and then they can't leave this guy to testify in court. So yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
Because
So he had
now
to be-
they're just going to target him next. The COs are going to kill his ass,
right, exactly.
or he's going to commit suicide, quote unquote, in his cell.
Right.
So, so he's transferred to California. Meanwhile, while in prison, Mark would marry again, the love of his life, a woman named Bonnie, who became Bonnie DeFriest a week before they'd even met in person. So they met through a pen pal list. She was a much older lady.
Wasn't she like 30 years his senior? She was much older.
I don't know her age, but she seemed every bit of it when you see them together.
Okay.
She's in the documentary. I think the documentary was made in like 2014, The Mind of Mark DeFriest, and she was like elderly, like to the point where she had like a cane and things like that. Like she had to have been in her 70s.
Yeah. So
And I think during this time, Mark was maybe in his 40s, something like that.
See what I mean? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that she was 30 plus years his senior.
Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, they seemed to have a great relationship, wrote and called to each other constantly, had conjugal visits, even on occasion, I believe. And they remain married to this day. And it's been her life's mission to get him released from prison for time served based on his mental illness, which seems fair to me at this point. He's not a dangerous person. That being said, he's probably going to go out and commit more shit, which we see later on. I mean, like harmless crimes other than to himself, but still unlawful.
Right.
She had a quote, which I think sums this whole case up perfectly. If he had just accepted his first brief sentence of 4 years, he'd be out. But his personality would not allow him to do so. Thus lies his condition of just... there was just no way he was not going to get more years added on. It's impossible for him.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And we mentioned the artwork earlier. She displays all of the cards that he's made for her and like the artwork and the projects he's done and sent her. And I was blown away by all of them. He's an amazing artist with drawing and coloring and also like building. He's just,
of course,
guy has so much potential.
Yes.
So much
He
potential.
just had that type of brain, man. His brain just worked. Yeah. He was a creator.
Yeah. It's too bad he didn't go into like being like a tattoo artist or something like that he could have really funneled his attention into.
Right. Yeah. Or an engineer or something, man.
Yeah.
Inventor.
Yeah. So while at FSP, the Florida Parole Commission was evaluating Mark's case every 2 years. And of course, he would never get parole because he just had so many disciplinary reports. Every time they would evaluate it after 2 years, there'd be, 50 plus disciplinary reports.
Yeah. Right. And you can't, that doesn't look good. You know what I mean? They're bringing up this huge laundry list of stuff he did wrong. It's like you can't even make the argument that he's a model prisoner.
No.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. He never stood a chance until Dr. Berland, who had decided his fate prior, saying that he was competent to stand trial, changed his mind about Mark's competency after 30 years. He played a big role in this documentary. He was interviewed throughout. He even interviewed Mark at one point. 30 years after they had first encountered each other, when he decided Mark's fate and sent him to prison, he sits Mark down in an office within the prison and interviews him and says, "Do you remember me? I helped you get put away 30 years ago." And Mark didn't hold a grudge, and Dr. Berland was kind of blown away by that. Like, I think Mark even thanked him for like sitting him down and like, thanks for coming around on this. And he was like, "You're quite a gentleman for even saying that." Because I think at this point, Dr. Berland felt terrible for the way things had gone for this guy. I mean, he'd been put in. I mean, he spent most of his time in prison. The vast majority in solitary confinement. Because how can you have him out there in general population? He's going to devise something. He's going to work together with other inmates and make some shit happen.
Yeah. Even it's like I would love to argue, why don't they just give him something to do, right? Why don't they give him a job? Because he's just going to use that shit to escape.
Yeah. 100%.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's frustrating. It's like he doesn't deserve this, but at the same time, I can almost empathize with the COs as well, because it's like he's making their life a living hell, and he's putting other people in danger, and that's easily justified in court. So I don't know, man. It's a tough situation. The justice system.
You give him an inch, he'll take a mile every time.
Yeah,
this guy,
right?
Yeah,
it's tough.
It is tough. It's almost like he should have just been like, once they learned what he was so long ago, they should have like had him on some sort of a, I don't know, I'd say parole program, I guess, or. But it's like at the same time, like you're going to check in on him and he's probably going to be doing some shit he's not supposed to. He's not going to stay in one place. Like if you say the restrictions of your parole state that you must stay in this same town and, keep a job in this state, he's just not going to do that stuff. He's probably going to be gone. And then you're going to have to put him back in prison again.
Yep. Absolutely. Damn it, Mark.
Yeah. So in the documentary, Dr. Berland visited him in prison and asked him many questions designed to evaluate someone's mental state. And Mark said that he's had frequent headaches from the time he was a child. Quote, "If I sleep more than 4 hours, I wake up with a monstrous ass headache." And that's been a part of his life forever. May go back to the shaken baby syndrome that his mom was responsible for.
Right.
In the last 15 years, efforts to persuade the Florida government and parole board to release DeFriest have included petitions started by his wife, Donnie DeFriest, legal representation of John Middleton, psychiatrist Dr. Robert Berland, his recanting of his assessment of DeFriest in the 80s, and outspoken positive reports from former warden of FSP, Ron McAndrew. So the former warden of Florida State Prison was interviewed throughout this, and he spoke to the mistreatment of Mark DeFriest during his time there. He has countless reports of the medical staff there saying that he had tons of bruises and cuts and everything else from the staff abusing him.
Right.
McAndrew knew exactly what was going on. He was the warden of this place. He knew that this guy was just being mistreated for years at that prison.
But he couldn't do anything about it though, because like I say, they're trying to make sure that he's safe and keeping other prisoners safe as well.
Yeah.
They didn't know if Mark was going to hurt himself. I mean, this guy removed his own tooth. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. So Mark's parole hearing on November 19th of 2014 in Tallahassee saw the unprecedented reduction of his potential release date from 2085, which he had racked it up to with all of those disciplinary reports, to March of 2015. So you're talking potentially a few months from when this hearing was. And this would have made it possible for the release date of March 2015, but additional outstanding sentences for cocaine, marijuana, contraband possession, and armed robbery were not first considered. And so, of course, it got pushed back. And finally, he would be granted parole on February 5th, 2019, with one of the conditions being that he spent 12 months in a mental health and substance abuse treatment facility. Community Outreach Incorporated in Corvallis, Oregon, was agreed upon due to its proximity to Bonnie's home, his second wife.
Right.
And so he entered the facility on February 7th, 2019, and by February 13th, Community Outreach revoked his residency due to unspecified behavioral violations. This raised the question of whether the Oregon facility was appropriately informed, prepared, or capable of providing him with the treatment, structure, and care that he needed for a successful transition into public life, as did the revelation that DeFriest tested positive for methamphetamine at the facility.
Not to say, at this point, he is probably addicted to lots of things. And at this point, you know what I'm saying? Somebody with this type of intellect, they're going to figure out how to get those things.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, this hospital may be able to keep them away from an average person by keeping them isolated or whatnot, but now Mark has a new goal, and it's not so much to escape. I think he's accepted his life in lockup or whatever, but he can't shake this addiction. And I think that's probably the unnamed violations, is that he's probably obtaining methamphetamines and everything else, or making his own somehow.
Right.
And, just trying to get high, trying to numb himself at this point.
Yep. I mean, this is a guy that spent nearly 25 years in solitary confinement. I just don't know if there's a way to transition him back to normal reality. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it, because if there was, this was his one chance and he blew it.
He blew it.
Yeah. The director of this facility described him as exhibiting bipolar mania. And as the behavioral issues and drug use were violations of his parole, Oregon began his transfer back to the Florida State prison system only 10 days after his release. And although advocates were initially optimistic for a quick release and second try, as of January 20th, 2022, DeFriest remains incarcerated in Florida. And if he ever sees the light of day again, it probably won't be for long, because he's just,
I
don't know.
Like you say, at this point, he's been in prison so long. He's been out of the world for so long, and he can't even conform, even with all of these horrible punishments, these horrible consequences, and he still can't make it. I mean, like I say, I think the system is partly to blame. You know, maybe some of his mental disorders are partly to blame, but either way, it's very frustrating, man. This is a career criminal created by the system, you know. And I think there's a lot of. I still don't think he deserves a life sentence, though.
But what do you do?
Hurt anyone.
What do you do?
I don't know. I don't know what you do, man. I don't know. I mean, other than
do you think if you just set him free, like no restrictions, do what you want, what do you think happens? You think I mean, does he hurt anyone? I don't know.
At this point, he probably overdoses.
Possible.
I think, you know, if he is still addicted to all these things, and like even in this mental facility, he was still tested positive for methamphetamine. Like, that's insane. Within a week of being transferred, he was transferred on February 7th, right? Like you said, and then February 13th. That's 6 days later.
Yeah.
They've already canceled the deal. They're like, nope.
Yeah.
We can't deal with him. 6 days. So how is this man supposed to spend 12 months here? It's just not in the cards for him. It's just not in the cards. He has to do things on his terms, apparently.
Well, all in all, he apparently escaped prison/mental hospitals 7 times, which is insane considering, like, you're talking prisons like Florida State Prison, high security situations. He discussed a story of where these guys came to him. I think it was at FSP, where they came to him and they're like, hey, we're trying to escape. And he's like, sweet, let's do it. What's the plan? And they're like, well, we got this saw blade. They had like a diamond blade, like a diamond coated saw blade. And he's like, what the fuck are you guys still doing here? He's like, he went to the cell and he's like, within 8 hours, I had the bars cut out with this fucking blade and I was out of there. Like, of course they caught up to him quickly, but.
Right. Yeah, he's something else, man. That's crazy. If he just, I mean, like you said, from the initial arrest, if he could have done, I don't think he even does a year, honestly. If he goes in there in good behavior, you know, in a low security prison for.
Well, I don't even think he gets arrested if he, like, when the officer comes to his trailer after he took his father's tools, if he comes out, talks to the officer and said, I didn't understand how this works. All I know is my dad said that he was going to give me these tools when he died. He died. I came and took the tools. I'm 18. I don't understand whatever this probate shit you're talking about is, blah, blah, blah. I'll give them back until this gets settled. I don't think anything happens. Nothing.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, maybe some probation or something. Yeah. They keep an eye on him.
Right.
Right. Maybe a like some type of warrant to stay away from his stepmother for a little while.
Yeah. Some sort of protection order or, Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Wow, man, what a heartbreaking
Certainly
story.
Not life in prison.
No, not life in prison, man. It's kind of like the Ross Ulbricht story, man. You know, somebody who wants to do things their own way, an extreme libertarian.
I think I can't believe autism was never brought up, because it does seem like that fits the most with him. Mm-hmm. To me, as someone who doesn't understand, but like, he just didn't know what was best for him at times, but also very talented and smart in many ways.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Almost needed like a caretaker, something, but like, that's a difficult task for anyone.
Absolutely.
He was that clever. Obviously, he's escaping prison, so like, good luck keeping a hold of this guy.
Exactly. He just needed to live life on his own terms, and unfortunately, like, this guy probably would have done really well, like, living off the grid in Alaska. You know, just go out middle of fucking nowhere where there's
maybe they should have just taken him up there and just dropped him off, and he'd have a fucking cabin built with electricity and everything in no time.
Have his own power plant. Yeah,
right?
Yeah, he would have been fine. Sometimes, you know, like I say, non-violent offenders, non-sexual offenders, I don't know, man. There's got to be better ways to deal with these people other than just keeping them in cages for their whole life.
Yep.
It's got to be. But amazing story.
Yep.
Absolutely, dude. The documentary is amazing. There's lots of information out on this guy. Like we said, all of our sources are down below, as well as links to our sponsors. Right?
Like Oh My Gaia.
Oh My Guy is an innovative, all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. And their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while still maintaining effectiveness. And at Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural, paraben, and aluminum-free organic ingredients. And guys, we have our very own scent from Oh My Gaia called True Crime Pine. If you'd like to check that out, you can at ohmygaia.com. There's also vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, coconut, dreamsicle, barbershop. That's another one of my favorites. Sailor, sweet pea, pear, bergamot, amber. There's definitely something to fit your vibe, to fit your mood. There's also scented oils as well as beard oils too. So guys, if you're doing the No Shave November, you need some beard oil, check it out. ohmygaia.com. That's ohmygaia.com. And because you're True Crime Guys listeners, you can use the word creeper for 15% off your order. That's CREEPER for 15% off at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram or ohmygaia.com. Again, that's ohmygaia.com. Make the switch, guys. You won't regret it.
Absolutely not. I've been rocking the beard oil from Tonic.
Yeah.
Or not from Tonic, from Oh My Guy. I'm already transitioning into the next sponsor. Right. But yeah, dude, it really makes a difference. If you don't do any oil or wax or anything in your beard, you got to. It just softens it up, makes it easier to comb and stuff, especially when it gets to a certain length, which mine, I'm going for the gusto this time. I'm going to see how big I can get this thing.
There you go.
That's what she said.
Why not? Why not there, Mountain Man?
Yeah, so let's check out Tonic Vibes as well, which is our weekly sponsor. They're providing you with CBD education, yes. Their products, 20% off if you use code word creeper at checkout at tonicvibes.com. We use this product daily. It helps with anxiety. They combine different herb superfoods into their CBD, which is different than a lot of CBD companies. They're combining ashwagandha and black seed oil and lemon balm and all sorts of different things into these to help you with anxiety or whatever you're dealing with, chronic pain. CBD has just a variety of useful cases. So if you haven't looked into it, look into it. tonicvibes.com, code word creeper at checkout for 20% off. Highly recommend it.
That's right, guys. That's right.
Yep.
All right. Also check out Patreon, patreon.com/True Crime Guys. You can get access to everything we make here at True Crime Guys Productions. On the $2 tier, you guys can get access to the first 50 episodes of the podcast that are now in the TCG Vault, as well as Patreon exclusives that we do every single month. And then if you bump up to the $5 tier, you also get all of that, plus access to Just the Banter. There's almost 100 episodes of Just the Banter between me and Lauren where we answer listener questions, we just shoot the shit, whatever. It's not a lot of crime, but it's obviously a lot of banter. We also got Sandu Stories, which we do is a well-produced, or we call it like a listening to a movie, if you will. Our Sandu Stories, they're based on, audio theater. They're based on true crime stories, most of them. It's like True Crime What if you will, as well as Strange Shorts with myself and Andy, where we just talk about funny cases and funny stories that are happening in true crime every single Monday. And you also get early access to our other show that you can catch on a free platform, Strange and Unexplained. You can listen to that wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out Strange and Unexplained by True Crime Guys, and you can get early access to those episodes every Thursday instead of on Mondays. All right, again, that's patreon.com/True Crime Guys. There's links right below the description of this episode. All right,
everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Keep creeping.
That's right. Oh, go subscribe on YouTube and watch the video.
Oh, yeah, check out the YouTube page. We're just about at 800 subscribers, so I think we need 2 more to get over that. So let's get there and then start marching towards 1,000.
Sounds good. All right.
All right, guys. Keep creeping.
Keep creeping, guys.
True Crime Guys. In the desert, we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us because you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you. Sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army. We out here making murder, get murder, get murder. True Crime Guys. In the desert, we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us because you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you. Sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army. We out here making murder charming.
From the minds of True Crime Guys, come
TCG Weekly. If you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to check out all the other programs on the TCG network.
Every Wednesday, a new episode of True Crime Guys proper, Strange and Unexplained on Mondays, and Full House Fantasy Football on Fridays to start your weekend. And if those aren't enough, head on over to our Patreon account, where you can have access to hundreds of hours of content, including older episodes and other Patreon exclusives like Strange Shorts, Sandu Stories, Higher Thoughts, and the 5-Minute Murder Show. But until next time, guys, keep creeping. Hey, how do you shut this thing off? Over? Feel like you're out, boy.